Manuel says, can you give a quick rundown of your new video? Yeah. Jean-Michel Basquiat, a black New Yorker, very known, made a painting of a black policeman and called it "Irony of Black Policemen." And I explained that irony. I try to explain that irony in the sense that there's a black policeman working for a system that is, rooted in white supremacy, and that, disenfranchises that black policeman himself and his family, his community, his people, whatever. And that being said, I want to add nuance and depth to that analysis of the irony of a black policeman. And I interviewed James Forman Jr., who is an activist, a Yale professor, and a Pulitzer Prize winning author. He wrote a book. I read it. I interviewed him, and I would say like a decent 70% of that video is the interview of that I had with Forman, which was a fascinating interview. And I'm excited to post the full interview on my second channel because he's really an interesting person. I was kind of nervous during the interview, so I stutter a lot. But maybe perhaps as I do more interviews like that, it was really, really fun to do. So I might do some more, and perhaps I will be less nervous when that happens. That's my quick rundown of my new video. All right. So yeah, as I was talking about the video, Basquiat, I saw a lot of comments of people kind of being angry about the video. It is a contentious topic, obviously. And I'm starting to confront those topics more and more through my videos, which is something I was shying away from because, the canvas is kind of my revenue. And so I try to stay away from those topics, but more and more I like to include them. And this one in particular was, people were angry. As a content creator, it's really easy to focus on the negative comments, or people who aren't happy about the comments or about the video or about the topics. Though in PhilosophyTube would make a great guest for your show. I don't know if Abigail would love to join this, but that would be amazing. I wouldn't say no. But yeah, so a lot of people were angry about I guess the stance, which I thought was kind of mild in the video. James Forman Jr., though, like, he is obviously an activist, a civil rights activist. He's not as radical as many, as most of the people I could have had on the show or on the episode. He wasn't there saying abolish the police. He wasn't even there saying all cops are racist. He was really talking about the system, and he really focused on a systemic criticism, and basically just saying that black representation within a system that's racist is not going to do much for that system. And I don't think that's a radical interpretation of the situation in America. I saw a comment that was saying something along the lines as I saw many comments actually saying, well, can you provide evidence that the police is racist as an institution? And I think because I've been thinking about that. I don't know. Maybe the canvas is because it's about art history. Those topics, which are a bit more complex, have to also be done on an introductory level. So when I'm talking about, for example, systemic racism within the police, I think that perhaps I should have been a bit more introductory about that commentary, because a lot of people in the comments are asking, well, can you prove that cops are racist? Well, I feel like, or not cops are racist, but the institution is racist or is based in racism, or there's systemic racism within that system. And part of me thinks that maybe I should have proven that, yes, there is racism. There's many ways that racism manifests itself through the criminal justice system in America. But at the same time, I was trying to have a more complex discussion about the role of Black people within that systemic issue. So it's like I'll give you an example. I'll give you an analogy. It's like I made a video on heliocentrism. All right, the whole theory that the Earth turns around the sun. And in that video about heliocentrism, I would say, well, as you may know, the sun is a really big sphere, and the Earth is also a big sphere. And then people interrupt me. They're like, whoa, hold on. Can you prove to me that the Earth is a sphere and not flat? Well, that would be kind of annoying, because I'm trying to talk about something like we're making assumptions that people already are informed and know about the topic. For example, that you know that there is systemic racism within the police. If you don't know that, the video is not for you. The same way, if you don't know that, you know, the Earth is a sphere and you think it's flat or whatever, then maybe the video about heliocentrism is not for you. You have to go go look at another video that's a bit more introductory. Because I don't think that was an introductory video, even though the Canvas, by virtue of being an art history channel, maybe should be more introductory. I don't know what you guys think about that. Page asks, says, institutions that recruit from more diverse pools and is a minor change to what the institutions actually do. And that's true, absolutely. That being said, I think it's still good to have a diversity in those institutions. Not because it'll improve these institutions, but if those institutions are already there, we might as well make them accessible. For example, James Forman Jr. talks about Black policemen. One of the advantages of Black policemen is the fact that you're giving good jobs to Black people, jobs that were beforehand not accessible, which is a really good argument. It's true. Like, being a policeman is, it can be good benefits, it can be a good wage. And just by virtue of that, you're propping up some members of the Black community, which is not necessarily bad. But in itself, it's not addressing the solution. It's just helping out a couple of individuals. It's like the whole meme, the more female drone pilots, right? Well, no, because we don't like drone pilots. But if there are going to be drone pilots, maybe it's not that bad of a thing in a male-dominated field to have more female, more women, just to have them have access to these positions. It's like, I'm not against a leftist or a friend being a cop. If a friend wants to be a cop, I might disagree with the institution, but him boycotting being a cop is not going to change anything. If anything, I'd probably rather have that person being, I'm not sure about being a cop because it can be problematic, but it's been my dream or whatever. Well, I'd rather have that guy be a cop than some other person thinking they want the thrill and they want the power and they want the adventure of being a cop. I'd much rather have that good guy, even though the institution is still going to make him do bad things. I'd still rather have him, or even a leftist. Same thing for landlords. A lot of leftists will say, well, I'd rather have a landlord that's a leftist and who's aware of the consequences and the power he has or they have as landlords, than have landlords, because whether you're a landlord or not, landlordism is still going to be around. So I'd rather have landlords who are aware of their power. Lee Hayes says, I think it was a great stance given what happened recently, shifting the discussion to a more nuanced set of ideals. Yeah, what happened recently, for those maybe outside of America and like me in Canada, you might have heard about it. Tyree Nichols, a black man who got murdered by, I think, 5 black cops, and people were saying, well, how could it be? How could that be racism? It's 5 black cops murdering a black man. There can't be any racism in that, right? Well, that's the whole point of the whole point of the video is to show, yes, there is racism, but it's not individual. Like, the problem is not individual bad apples, individual racist cops. The problem is the institution in general. And I think that's like the Tyree Nichols situation, like best portrays that, the systemic element of the issue. Ethan says, as someone from the UK, where our parliament is made up of many mixed ethnic groups, it is very interesting to see how such groups still allow racist structures to exist. Yeah, you would absolutely love the book by Forman Jr. You would really, really enjoy it. Absolutely. And what's interesting about it is those racist structures sometimes are maintained or even reinforced by people who see their communities disempowered by these structures. But they reinforce these structures of oppression thinking that it will help them. One example that James Forman gives in his book is the war on drugs. He shows historically how many black leaders were actually in favor of the war on drugs, but were also in favor of other reforms to help drug abuse to stop in their community. Because drug abuse leads to a lot of crime, and it's a whole problem, obviously. And a lot of black leaders, as James Forman Jr. Presents, were against legalizing, for example, marijuana, even though the legalization of marijuana definitely helps the black community in the sense that you get less reasons for people to go to jail for having weed on them or whatever. But a lot of black leaders would oppose legalization of marijuana because they said, well, that's going to make our whole youth be high. It's going to stop them from fighting, for their rights, fighting for their emancipation. So yeah, no, it's not necessarily malicious. That example shows that it's not always malicious. The problem is conservatives. That's a joke. It's not a joke. Yeah, Paige saying, yes, I agree. Rainbow capitalism is preferable to fascist capitalism, but it still is capitalism. Yeah, absolutely. I prefer rainbow capitalism all the way. I don't like it, but, harm reduction and all that. A clumsy artist says, gives the metaphor of the hotel, saying someone who is really anti-wheelchair, disabled people, or anti-wheelchair people builds a hotel, and then someone who is fine with people in a wheelchair buys the hotel, but the hotel is still inaccessible for people in a wheelchair, even though it was because it was designed to disempower people in wheelchairs. So what do you do, right? Well, you need to have major reforms. It's not the fault of the guy who bought the hotel, right? Or the person who bought the hotel. It's not their fault if their hotel is anti-wheelchair and makes their hotel a living hell for people in wheelchairs. But it's still a responsibility for them to make it accessible and make it, fair. But you did explain it well. Good job on that. The boy says, surely it's hard to judge a character by the first impressions. A quick question: how would someone combat these structures? Defunded them, did not work as they did after George, and crime went up. The reason why crime goes up, though, is systemic. I'll answer that question by saying there's one of the ways black leaders, I was giving that example, one of the ways black leaders wanted to fight against one of the reasons they wanted to fight against drug abuse was not only keeping it illegal, but also giving, it was, as James Forman Jr. Puts it, an all of the above solution. So make it legal, but if it's not illegal, make programs, give resources to the community to fight drug related issues. But what happens is instead of doing all the above, you just focus on one thing that doesn't actually solve the issue, because the issue is systemic. There's not only one solution to solving an issue. If, like, for example, like police abuse or systemic racism within the police is not going to be solved just by defunding it. Obviously not, right? There's a myriad of things that you need to do in order to reform systems if you want to reform them. JP says, how can people fight against that type of internalized racism? It's really, it's not easy, because it's how we're brought up, but I think it's education and reading, and sometimes making parallels between someone's situation and your own situation. Sometimes it makes it easier, because it's really hard to understand, like, for example, white privilege. If you're a white person, obviously, it's really hard to, it's like asking a fish to see water or to explain water is just all around them. Well, how do you explain, like, how can a white person, or how can you show a white person that they have white privilege? Same thing for internalized racism. So how do you show that? Well, you can show white privilege, or a privilege that you don't see, to someone by pointing out maybe a way in which they're disprivileged. So, for example, if they're not good looking, or even if they are good looking, we can agree that there's privilege to looking good. If you look good, you have better chances at interviews. You have a better time interacting with others. You have a better time with getting partners, getting friends, and people understand that. Intuitively, you understand that there is a privilege coming with looking good. And what does looking good look like? Well, I mean, it's like social. It's social construction. But if you can make someone admit that they do have, or they don't have, this privilege of the good looking privilege, then how can you not acknowledge that there is this there's such a thing as white privilege, right? And I feel like this intersectional view of of oppression and how privilege manifests itself in society, and it's manifests itself in many different ways. But if you can understand that, then you can probably understand a lot of other ways that people are disprivileged, or are disadvantaged in ways that you could not see necessarily. The boy says, another question: is there an example of a model police force in the world that people can be led by? Example, like maybe Japan police force. I don't know enough about police forces internationally to know if there's a model police force. My critique of the police force is a critique that would apply to any police force in the world. Being an anarchist, I see my critique of the police force is that it's inherently political, and I think that that's it's not debatable. The police is political. It reinforces the laws set forth by people in power, by people who are privileged by power, and I think it's a quote by Anatole France. I don't know if I ever quoted it in a Canvas video, but I love that quote. Let me bring it up just because I want quote about, it's like sleeping under a bridge. All right, so wait, I'm gonna use this view right here. All right, so it's right here. The law, in its majestic equality, forbids rich and poor alike to sleep under bridges, to beg in the streets, and to steal loaves of bread. So basically, he's saying that he's using sarcasm here to say that the law isn't like it's not equal, basically. But yeah, so basically, the law isn't fair. Obviously, it's going to disproportionately have an impact on poor people, on people who are disadvantaged, and because of that, the police who enforces these laws will necessarily enforce it more to the disempowered. It's even though you might not think of it as political, it is. Some people would call it class war, where like the cops are the armed force of the state, and in a world where the state is basically rich people, and the state is, I'll say controlled by rich people, or not even controlled by rich people, are rich people, then they are the armed force of rich people, keeping disempowered people in line. But I think that's again a systemic critique of cops. I don't think it's individual cops who are necessarily like they're filling up that role, but they're not necessarily doing it knowingly. Yeah, the boys saying the police will always obey the ones who pay them. Yeah, that's, well, a lot of people would compare them to a mercenary force. They're paid to protect the interests of a few. There are ways that we can improve that system for sure. I'm sure because we're still answering the question of, is there like a model police force? There might be, and there might be better ways in terms of harm reduction. There might be better ways to have, to institute police reform and stuff like that. But my criticism of it is really inherent to the very function of the police in its function of protecting the state and the interests of the state and the wealthy. As you've seen, I made a video on the tomato soup can on the Van Gogh painting, right? And that video, I basically agree with the idea that we need direct action to fight against climate change. But this fight against climate change, the only people who can, or not the only people, but the main people who are going to stop this fight for climate change, this fight for survival, directed at the wealthy, because obviously the wealthy are the ones leading the charge to destroy our planet, then the only people who are going to destroy the interests of the wealthy, which is to destroy the planet and to gather as many resources and have us consume as much junk as possible, the people who are going to protect them and their interests are cops. It's not going to be us. They're not going to protect us. The cops are not going to go, arrest rich people for fucking up the earth or the planet. They're going to arrest us for fucking up, pipelines and stuff like that. It's a class war issue. Yes, I don't know how to say your name. I don't even know the alphabet. I think it's Hebrew. I'm not even sure. It says police in a democratic country, democratic countries are not even as close as bad as in dictator regime. Yes, that's true. Absolutely. But it doesn't take away their function of reinforcing the interests of the wealthy. I think it's Noam Chomsky who wrote something along the lines as propaganda is to democracy what the baton is to dictators. So, dictators might need more of the oppression of really more intrusive cops, while democratic countries don't necessarily need I don't know how to say it, more overtly implicated cops. In democracy, we don't need that because we kind of accept the way things are more easily. But when there are protests, for example, cops serve the same exact function as in dictator regimes. Maybe they won't shoot us, but they'll use non-lethal weapons on us when we march or when we protest. You see the true face of cops once you protest, or they're not their true face, but like their true function, their true function as a political force. Yes, I would. A clumsy artist says, yes, I would also like to add that in the Balkans and other second and third world countries, the police treat it like a business and scam, put false fines. Yeah, and it was done also in the United States and in Canada, but it's true that it's more pervasive, less pervasive here, more pervasive in countries with less less opportunities for its people. I heard Romania is a really good place for to bribe cops or bribe or to bribe prisoners, prison guards. That's what I heard. Ethan says the police seldom stop crime, public spending towards communities, education, social welfare, etc. diminish crime. And yeah, absolutely, Ethan. That's something that even cops will agree with. Because cops are very often reactive to crime. You know, oh, I just got robbed, I'll call the police. You know, you might be able to call the police when when the robbery's happening, but by the time the cops arrive, the robber's gone. And a lot of things, and a lot of situations like that, it's more of a reactive thing. My car got stolen. You know, I got broken in my house. It's you know, there are ways when the police is actively I'm thinking like domestic abuse. But even then, how helpful can they be? I'm sure like very often they can be very helpful. I don't want to like diminish that, because I know a lot of cops, and I know sometimes their situation can be even traumatic, because you witness the worst parts of humanity. But yeah, it's more reactive. And when you talk about public spending towards communities, education, social welfare, that is more a proactive, like a preemptive effort to stop crime. Give people something to lose, and they're gonna be less tempted to actually risk it by doing crime. When people have nothing to lose, you're gonna, yeah. I mean, if it ain't peaceful protests, I mean, protests are never gonna be peaceful. I don't think it should be peaceful, basically, personally. I think protests are meant to, to disturb, because, a protest is what happens when you're not heard. If your protest is peaceful, you still won't be heard. If you write petitions, if you write letters to your representatives, if you do different ways of putting pressure on your representatives and they don't listen to you, then what you do is protest. But what makes you think that if you do a peaceful protest, they're going to listen to you more than when you did letters, when you did public calls to I don't know, write petitions and stuff like that? They're not going to listen to you. Even a peaceful protest, they're not going to listen to you. Hell, we had one of the biggest protests in Montreal was about climate change. Protesting against our leaders. And it was peaceful. It didn't do shit, obviously. And guess who was at the protest? Justin Trudeau, Like, who do you think we're protesting against, Why are you marching with us? Wait, are you protesting against, like, this shadow government that we don't know about? You're with us in this fight, but you are the person we're fighting as well? Like, if you're peaceful, people are not, like, they're not going to take you, a good book to read about that is let me pull it up again. Hold on. Free on the anarchistlibrary.org. I hope that's not illegal. There you go. The anarchistlibrary.org. Peter Galdoudou's How Nonviolence Protects the State. It's not necessarily against nonviolence, if I remember correctly. It's not against nonviolence, but it's against the dogma of only nonviolence is okay to do. Violence is inherent to the political, to politics. Violence is political. Politics is violence. And when you're trying to protest, you're not being violent. You're not protesting. Yatuhi001 asks, what do you think is Basquiat's message in his irony of black policemen? Just being curious. I answered that question in the video. You didn't watch the video, did you? No. In the video, I answered the question. I think what he's criticizing, or what his message is that basically there's the irony of black people working for the protection of white hegemony in a way, or protecting through violence, through the baton, through the gun, protecting the state, which is and has been racist. M. Moore says, on topic, how would Basquiat feel about black cops sweeping the forest to make way for Cop City? I imagine he wouldn't like it. One comment I thought was funny is someone said, like, oh, Basquiat, they were trying to say that Basquiat doesn't criticize cops. Or something like that, if I remember correctly. No, I don't think Basquiat liked cops. I'm not a Basquiat scholar, but his representation of cops are not favorable.